Jax and Gangle have what seems like a pretty typical dynamic within film and TV at a first glance. That of a character who's quite the jokester and the friend they often tease in a playful manner. Initially, they reminded me of Nagatoro and Naoto from Don't Toy With Me Miss Nagatoro, but as we've gotten to know these characters better, their relationship has taken a much more sinister turn to say the least, with it being, dare I say, abusive. But is that really all there is to their dynamic? Now, I've seen others sharing this theory online recently that Jax treats Gangle the way he does because he has a bit of a soft spot for her. Let me just say, I came up with that theory way back when episode 1 dropped. I've had my eye on these two the whole time, and I really do think this is a likely theory with the way Jax has been written thus far. So, let's discuss. Warning, this video contains opinions that may or may not align with your own. Please be kind to everyone in the comments when discussing. Also beware of spoilers for the amazing digital circus. From the very first interaction in episode 1, we can quickly see how these two characters are going to bounce off of one another. I've discussed this in my previous video, so I'm not going to get too into it right now, but Jax revealed in episode 6 that he and everyone else fall into these character archetypes, stating that he's the funny one while Gangle is the sad one. I believe that Jax views this as a way to avoid abstraction, as he has dehumanized himself and disassociated from the reality of the situation. Can't go crazy about the digital world you're living in when you refuse to confront it, can you? So, Jax maintains this funny persona of his, but he isn't really the funny one. I received an interesting comment on my last video from Zyra Zane, as they pointed out how Jax is kind of trying to be a Bugs Bunny type character. Bugs Bunny is someone who's smart, witty, effortlessly cool, and tends to come out on top in any situation he finds himself in. He teases and tricks those around him, but not really in a malicious way like Jax does. He often allows people to make fools of themselves, simply setting up the situation for them to do so. Jax thinks he's giving Bugs Bunny, but in reality, he's kind of just being a bully, with Gangle being his most common victim. So why exactly do I think he likes her then? Well, it's complicated, and this show is written with a lot of subtlety. So the dynamics between these characters cannot be chalked up to a simple bully/victim dynamic, as there is much more to it than that. Let's get into more of their interactions throughout the series. Jax has been shown multiple times to have a soft spot for Gangle, even in episode 1. During the scene after Jax, alongside Pomni and Ragatha, discovers that Kaufmo is abstracted, he stumbles upon Kinger and Gangle outside of the hole to the Gloink nest. When Gangle asks how Kaufmo's doing, he sticks to his archetype, acting relaxed and saying how Kaufmo's just fine, never better even. He keeps the mood lighthearted at first, but when he hears that Kaufmo is loose and somewhere nearby, he quickly finds a way to get Kinger and Gangle out of the situation, tossing the bowling ball at them and throwing the two into the hole. At a first glance, this seems malicious, and his intention behind his actions doesn't justify what he did, but in a way, he was protecting them and sheltering them from the situation playing out across the circus. Something else to note is that his expression often softens when interacting with Gangle, and he tends to go out of his way to incite these interactions. Just to name a few examples, in the first episode when he says,
"This is dumb and weird,"
his facial expression softens slightly when he glances towards Gangle, almost as if he's trying to gauge her reaction to his comment. Another time that this happens is in episode 3. Towards the end of the episode, Jax is tied up and he's forced to sit there and listen while Ragatha and Gangle chat. His expression can be seen shifting as the two speak though, tensing up a bit when Ragatha is speaking and softening when Gangle is. This is clearly intentional and not just animated for no reason. We all know how Jax feels about Ragatha after the stargazing scene in episode 5, so his reaction of being tense here makes sense and is in line with how he sees Ragatha. But softening up for Gangle would go against their presented relationship, that of a bully and a victim. This happened once again in episode 4. Jax is seen progressively getting more and more annoyed by this adventure, which was actually suggested by Gangle. This would give him a more legitimate reason to be upset with her and take his anger out on her, but he generally doesn't. At least, not how I see it. He's more upset about the adventure itself, not Gangle.
Oh, are you kidding me? Hey, Gangle! I think the clock's broken.
Is it broken? Or are we the broken ones?
Great.
He could yell at Gangle here if he really wanted to, but I think he feels bad seeing her like this, and instead he softens up a bit and lets her get this dress off. And for the rest of the adventure, he's generally compliant. These animators wouldn't just throw these details in for no reason. There's meaning behind the facial expressions our characters make, and Jax will show a softer side to him that we don't often get to see. Another thing we see throughout the series is how the two are often paired up together on adventures, typically because of Jax's actions. In episode 6, when selecting teams for the gunfight, he gets genuinely annoyed when Gangle wants to be on Zubal's team, stating that the two have always been a team. This could be for multiple reasons. Possibly a combination of the fact that Gangle is the easiest to manipulate, but also because he simply likes her company. When looking back on the show after this episode, you notice how often the two are together throughout the series, with episode 1 being the only time he didn't pair himself and Gangle up. Though perhaps that's because he wanted to get a feel for Pomni, since she was new and all. In episode 2, when he's disappointed by the horn and the tanker, he has Gangle drive instead, and towards the end of the episode when they're sitting atop the tankers, he and Gangle are once again paired up. You'd think Gangle would sit with the others and leave Jax alone, but she didn't. At the start of episode 4,
Jax!
I actually didn't mean to do that.
in this scene he actually breaks her mask, but he immediately states that it was an accident, and I think he's being sincere here. His stance, tone, and general look of surprise when it happens really do make it feel like it was an honest mistake. In episode 3, we see him make an effort to include Gangle in on his conversation with Pomni and Ragatha.
Hey, be nice to her. She's had a rough couple of days.
Her and everyone else. Right, Gangle?
He's making an explicit effort to stick close to Gangle in all these situations, and if they aren't naturally together, he often goes out of his way to include her. We can even see in episode 5 during the stargazing scene, he's glancing at Gangle spending time with Zubul, once again showing how much he pays attention to her. One more thing I'd like to point out is that in Gangle's promotional video for the Favorite Character Awards that was featured on the Wacky Watch website, Jax calls himself her best friend, which was quite surprising given how he reacted to Pomni in episode 6. But perhaps it's different from him calling her his best friend. You can be someone else's best friend, but not consider them to be yours. I don't know if that's really canon, but I did find it interesting. Another non-canon moment I noticed when rewatching everything for this video was in the ad promoting their Animini's figures. The premise of the ad is that they're all slowly getting frozen one by one, and once this begins, they all run around in a state of panic. I noticed that when Jax runs by Ragatha freezing, he doesn't stop to acknowledge it really, but when he bumps into Gangle, he stops to watch as she screams before freezing. This is so irrelevant to the video since this is probably completely non-canon, but it does show a level of concern for Gangle that he doesn't hold for the others, at least not as much. So if Jax has a soft spot for Gangle, why does he bully her so often to the point of her genuinely being afraid of what he may do to her? I believe this is because of how Jax interacts with the circus as a whole. I touched upon it a bit earlier, but Jax has assigned these archetypes to everyone in the circus, and I believe he sees these as a way to avoid abstraction. By playing by the rules of the circus and accepting your characterization, you can get by without losing your sanity, but this technique clearly isn't even working for Jax, with this persona of his breaking at times and only adding more stress and suffering to his existence here. Jax stated that Gangle's archetype is the sad one, and I believe it is his intent to keep her in this box so that she won't abstract. He likes Gangle and cares for her, but if she breaks character, he may lose her. So he takes an extreme approach to the situation and bullies her relentlessly. In episode 5, during the stargazing scene, there's a moment I found rather interesting.
Maybe she just doesn't want to hang out with someone who's mean to her all the time.
She likes when I'm mean to her, though.
I think Jax is being sort of genuine here, as if he really believes she does enjoy their playful dynamic. I talked about how Jax is putting on a sort of Bugs Bunny type performance earlier, and in shows like the Looney Tunes, we often see Bugs messing with his friend Daffy Duck. Yet the two are still friends, though of course, Daffy Duck matches Bugs' energy a bit more, often fighting back. But Bugs still tends to come out on top. In the 2011 adaptation, we see this dynamic continue, but in this version, Bugs and Daffy are actually roommates and close friends, despite their playful rivalry. I think Jax's problem here is that for his dynamic with Gangle to be endearing and lovable, Gangle would have to serve it back to him every once in a while. But whenever she does, he kind of drops this persona of his and gets upset. Take for example in episode 5 when Gangle holds the vote to put Jax in a maid dress. As the funny one, Jax should keep his cool and play it off, acting more nonchalant about the situation like he doesn't care. But he's more than just the funny one. So, he doesn't. Instead, he freaks out at Gangle, chasing after her and yelling. After having a bit of time to cool off, he does eventually accept it, making a lighthearted joke about it, so he has successfully slipped back into his archetype, but for a moment he did let his funny demeanor slip. Another time when Gangle gets one over on Jax is basically the entire Spudsies adventure, but more specifically when they first get started. Jax immediately starts pushing Gangle's boundaries as manager, not believing she'll do anything. But with her manic mask now in play, she's not taking this kind of treatment from Jax, and calls in Kane to prepare a punishment for bad employees.
Why would you do this?
It's called a manic episode, and you're getting 3 more seasons. Anyway.
Notice how uncomfortable Jax looks here. This is a side of Gangle he's not used to seeing, one that genuinely goes against the archetype he's chosen for her. Later in the episode, she once again pushes back against his poor attitude, and he comments on how he likes her better when she's sad.
I like you better when you're sad.
In this scene, we actually hear her mask shatter slightly, but the one she's wearing is plastic, so it can't break as easily. I will touch upon this later though, so keep that in mind. Anywho, Jax has completely dropped his funny persona here because he's not used to Gangle pushing back against him. Gangle has dropped her archetype too, even if it's one she's not aware Jax has assigned her, and this clearly annoys Jax to some degree. I truly do believe that Jax is behaving this way, partially because he sees it as the best method to protect Gangle from abstraction. That doesn't actually excuse his behavior towards her, but at least we can understand why exactly he behaves this way now. We've talked a lot about Jax for this video so far, so let's focus on Gangle a bit more. Why exactly does Gangle put up with this behavior from Jax? Well, as we can see, Gangle has a more soft-spoken personality throughout the show. We learn a lot about what her life was like before the circus in episode 4 when she's giving Jax extra training. We learn here that she gave up on her dreams of being a webtoon artist and instead pursued a career in fast food. I can imagine that having to work a job she most likely wasn't truly passionate about, and that many in society degrade, was pretty hard on her mental health. But you can't show emotions like that in a work environment. They say to keep your work and personal life separate. Gangle may have been forced to constantly mask in her original life before arriving in the circus, hence the form she's taken in this world. I won't get too much into it, but I really enjoy the theory that perhaps their personalities and lives in the real world impacted the forms they take on here in the circus, but that's simply a fun theory for now, so we won't take it as a fact. Anyways, Gangle definitely struggles with her mental health. Jax's treatment towards her is certainly not helping either. In episode 6, we get a nice glimpse into Gangle's relationship with herself.
How are you supposed to like the part of yourself that just makes you worse than everyone else?
Zubul offers great advice to Gangle in this moment, a similar mantra to one that I live by. Not to get too personal here, but I've struggled with self-love my entire life and have always been insecure as a person. But I truly believe that self-love is the best solution to these insecurities. I struggled immensely with such a concept for years, unable to even look in the mirror at one point. But as Zubul said, self-love is a choice to accept ourselves for who we are, flaws and all. Up to this point in her life, Gangle has been forced to put on a mask, hide her emotions, and every day, that mask eventually breaks, revealing how she truly feels. I've actually never heard anyone else mention this, but I don't believe her comedy mask is actually impacting her mood, or at least not as much as we think it is. In episode 6, we see her on cloud 9 when she finds the Tommy gun, having the time of her life. Even when she's then shot and killed by Pawnee, breaking her comedy mask, she's still happy beneath it. Not even just happy. She's got the biggest grin we've ever seen from her. The tears now looking like tears of joy rather than sorrow. Earlier in the episode, when they're deciding on the day's adventure, you can see how uncomfortable Gangle looks, but she still has her comedy mask on at this point. I feel like they may impact her mood slightly, but it could also just be a visual way of showing when she's masking versus when she's not. Jax pointed out in the stargazing scene in episode 5 that her mask still breaks every day, even when she's spending time with Zubul, and he's right. Even when he doesn't break her mask, we see it break at some point in every episode. Another moment to note is in episode 4, when Jax tells her that he prefers her when she's sad.
I like you better when you're sad.
And we see this happen again with Ragasa as well.
No offense, but you're kind of annoying when you have your happy mask.
As we discussed earlier, in this episode she's wearing a plastic mask given to her by Zubul, one that seems to put her in a kind of manic state. We hear the sound of her mask shattering, but it doesn't actually break, since this one is plastic and all. I feel as though this mask was forcing her to continue the facade of being happy, not allowing her the normal relief of letting her mask fall for the day, which would be emotionally draining. We can see this when she steps out later in the episode, taking a moment to remove the mask and having a brief crash out only to be caught by Pomni.
You good?
She even notes how her comedy mask is usually broken by now, once again reaffirming my belief that she is being forced to maintain a persona that she doesn't have the energy to maintain. So think about it this way. Have you ever been in a situation where you need to maintain a friendly and personable mood, but your social battery is run out and you honestly just want to collapse into your bed and rot for the rest of the day? Well, imagine that there are still hours left in this social situation, and if you let this friendly persona slip, it'll have serious consequences. Sounds pretty miserable, right? That's pretty much how I feel like Gangle must have felt in this episode. She doesn't have the energy to maintain such high energy and positivity at this point, but is physically being forced to by this mask. Now, you might be thinking, Melon, you said like 2 minutes ago that her mask doesn't affect her mood. I was talking about her normal mask. The plastic one is clearly different, okay? I just wanted to clear that up. Anyway, Gangle clearly struggles with her mental health, and these struggles are shown to us through her comedy mask as she's forced to hide how she truly feels, and put on a more lighthearted persona. Who else do we know who is forced to mask in the circus though? None other than Jax himself. Perhaps he sees breaking Gangle's comedy mask as a way of releasing her from the stress of maintaining this facade of being happy. Despite everything Jax does to her, Gangle stays close by his side. This could partially be because she's afraid of what he'll do to her if she doesn't stick with him, but I think there could perhaps be some semblance of a friendship between the two of them. In episode 6, Gangle even implies that she feels like a toy to Jax during her heart-to-heart with Zubul, but despite this, we still often see the two of them interacting the most. In episode 1, we see the two together during the latter half of the episode, with Jax teasing her a bit through the adventure. Despite this teasing, the two can be seen conversing at the dinner table at the end of the episode, talking over Pomni. In the following episode, as I mentioned earlier, the two often act as a duo, with the two even riding the tanker together towards the end. Like I said, Gangle could have chosen to sit with Ragatha and Kinger, and I bet if Jax tried to force her, Ragatha would have stood up for her like she does in episode 4 when he breaks her comedy mask while playing softball. Speaking of, she was playing with Jax, and didn't seem bothered by that, even getting excited to throw the ball properly. In episode 5, we see him stick with her in his adventures, choosing to hunt her first in Poacher's Paradise, and assigning her a similar role to his own in the President Pomni adventure, making the two of them both extremists from Australia and New Zealand. He was visibly upset when she chose to pair off with Zubul instead of him in episode 6, clearly annoyed by such a decision. I truly don't believe that he chooses to hang out with her the most exclusively because she's submissive and agreeable, as he describes her, but rather because he just generally enjoys her company. Notice how in episode 4, he doesn't lash out at her too often, just more so gets annoyed about the situation in general.
Alright, I'm clocking out. This wasn't fun at all. See you all later.
Look at her reaction here. Before Jax spoke, it was more neutral and tired, but after his comment about disliking the adventure she suggested, she looks much more upset, likely hurt by his words specifically. Despite everything, she cares about Jax's opinion. That was a lot of yapping, so let's get back to the main topic of the entire video now. Does Jax care about Gangle? I would say yes, but he's clearly not expressing it in a healthy manner, like, at all. I feel like the theory that Jax secretly cares for Gangle and has a soft spot for her is quite valid, and I noticed this dynamic between the two right away when the show first released. There are so many moments that prove this, but I wouldn't exactly classify their relationship as a healthy friendship, but rather a toxic codependency on one another. With how the show is going though, Gangle does seem to be gaining the confidence to stand up for herself a bit more, and I can't wait to see her growth in the coming episodes. Perhaps we'll see the relationship develop more as well. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts and if you agreed or disagreed with anything I said, so please feel free to leave a comment. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all have a wonderful day or night, and if you're watching this just before bed, sleep tight. Bye!